Info product and coaching businesses are dying in 2026 and beyond. And if you don't learn how to take your info business and remold it into something that can actually work in the age of AI and beyond, there is a very good chance that your company and all of your income is going to get wiped out in the next 12 months. But there is a way to transition your info business into something that can work in the future, leveraging psychological principles, because those don't change even as AI takes over. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why some operators are winning and thriving even more than ever, and how you can actually use that understanding to thrive in 2026 and beyond. Let's get into it. All right, now with the trust recession, just so that we understand what actually happened, when the info space was new, people bought very easily with zero skepticism. Basically, all the sales were just pure excitement, and there was zero reference point for people to say, oh, this didn't work in the past, and so I'm not going to do it again. But now, hundreds of thousands of info businesses exist worldwide with a lot of bad apples, a lot of fake screenshots, a lot of overpromised results, pressure tactics everywhere. And so because of this, close rates are dropping, ad spend is getting more expensive. To make the same amount of profit you made, 5 years ago, you probably have to spend 4 or 5, maybe even 10x more now. And the market is becoming way more sophisticated, and a more sophisticated market always brings more skepticism with it. And so everybody calls this a trust recession, but I haven't actually seen anybody explain why this happens and what happens inside of your prospect's brain that causes it. So let's break it down. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala. This is the brain's threat detection center. It is a small little almond-shaped structure that's deep inside the brain, inside the limbic system. And its only job is to scan every interaction, both synchronous and asynchronous, for danger before a conscious thought ever even kicks in. This part of your brain will process threat signals in approximately 150 milliseconds. This is 12 times faster than conscious thought. And when it detects a threat, fight or flight response fires, cortisol spikes, and the prefrontal cortex shuts down. This is very important. I'll explain that in a moment. But 10 years ago, or even just like 5 years ago in the info space, the amygdala had zero reference point for online coaches. There was no real threat pattern that was built yet, and people bought freely. But now the amygdala has been conditioned over years of experience, years of exposure, seeing thousands of fake screenshots, all their friends telling them how they got scammed online, being on pressurized closing calls with fake scarcity and manipulative VSLs. And every time that somebody gets burned, their amygdala logs it. And so that's exactly what your prospects have experienced. They have gotten burned, their amygdala logs that, and then now builds a threat pattern in order to recognize it next time, in order to protect them from getting burned again. And so the very moment that, let's say, a sophisticated prospect sees your ad or your VSL or meets your sales rep on a call, the amygdala scans that, finds it in milliseconds, and matches anything with the threat pattern that they previously built. And so their fight or flight fires, their walls go up ever before you even said a single word. And this is why prospects say things like, I need to think about it, or this feels too soon, I want to talk to my partner, I need more proof. They're not asking for more logic. They are in fight or flight, and most business owners just end up responding with more logic and reasons for them to buy, which just makes it worse. Now, remember that little part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex I said we'd come back to? The reason that's important is because all logic is processed in the prefrontal cortex. So when the amygdala gets fired, it detects a threat, the fight or flight response fires, and the prefrontal cortex goes offline. What's happening is they are so triggered that they will not process, their brain will physically not process any logical arguments that you make trying to get them to calm down. So this is basically a tripwire that you cannot trip under any circumstances. Otherwise, your clients will not buy from you. Even if they go through the rest of the sales process, they still won't buy from you, which is incredibly inconvenient, terrible for ROI, and ends up just making the whole process feel more friction-filled than it needs to be. Now, let's get into the next process, which is the decision layer. Now, there's 2 layers in every interaction. There's the surface layer, which is the prefrontal cortex, the logic, the arguments, the case studies, price justification. This is where 99% of info and coaching businesses operate on their marketing side. And the decision layer, which is identity, emotion, and trust. And this is really where every real buying decision is actually made. So I'll explain it to you like this. The limbic system makes buying decisions before the neocortex evaluates a single logical argument. So the prefrontal cortex is part of the neocortex. The limbic system is a deeper part of the brain, more emotional part. Now, neuroscientists call this somatic marking, where the body physically assigns an emotional tag, if you will, just like in your CRM, before conscious reasoning ever begins. And this basically results in that by the time your prospect is evaluating your offer logically, the emotional decision has already been made. So logic does not create the decision, it justifies it afterwards. You may have heard this before, but just think about it this way. When you hit the surface layer, the amygdala fires, resistance goes up, objections get created, and they end up not buying. But when you operate at the decision layer, the amygdala relaxes. Prospects feel safe, certain, no objections, and they ask you, how much do you need from me in order to get started? So leverage this more inside of your marketing and sales processes to trigger more of the identity, emotion, and trust, and less logic, arguments, case studies, and price justification. Now, a bit of a caveat here, I will say, case studies, if done well, can trigger more trust. However, you have to ensure that you make them in a way that feels real and is not fake. However, if your case studies are even presented in the same way that other, let's say, coach who worked with this person in the past and burned them, how they did their case studies, then their brain is automatically going to be triggered. So you have to do things differently and in a way that feels more human. Now, we do have a process for this that we use often in the Wired to Buy program. This is a consulting agency that I run, where we take all these psychological principles and install them into businesses so that you can stop playing whack-a-mole and feeling like you're constantly changing everything, and finally just get a process that you know works with human behavior rather than against it. So if you'd like to chat with us about doing something like that, hit the link down in the description below and we can chat. Now, before we go any further, I want to point out a trap that a lot of business owners fall into after they've been doing this game for a little while. The natural tendency that humans have when numbers drop or when things aren't going well in the business is, oh, I need to create a new offer, I need to create a new marketing strategy, I need a new objection handling framework, I need a new trainer for my sales team, new manager, whatever it may be. And this created an entire industry. It's built up a lot of market cap because so much trust was lost in the market that business coaching businesses exploded. So every business owner realizing that what they're doing isn't working, their immediate thought is, oh, I need the next shiny thing. And so an entire industry was built selling them exactly that. This is how we got business coaches teaching business coaches, teaching business coaches, coaches coaching coaches. And it's this whole incestuous pool where nobody really even knows what they're doing. Let's be real. And so I'm going to save you years on your life and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. A new shiny object is not going to fix the problems that are caused by you working against human behavior and psychology while we're in a trust recession. It might work for a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months. But the sophistication of the market always goes up and never goes down. And every guru selling you a new program, I pretty much guarantee it, their new offer framework will expire in 6 to 12 months. Their brand new marketing strategy that's working right now will expire in 6 to 12 months. Their sales script that they promise is going to get you a 100% close rate will expire in 6 to 12 months. Any guru who is selling you a shiny new marketing or sales program just doesn't get this. Or they get it and they don't care anyway because they want to get you to pay them money over and over and over again. The only thing that doesn't expire, and this is something I've realized after years of being in this business and millions of dollars invested and made, it's not the tactics, right? It's the humans. The human brain has not changed in 200,000 years. The psychological principles underneath every tactic that has ever worked, those are permanent. If they haven't changed for the last 200,000 years, chances are they're not going to change for the next 50 years or however long you plan to be in business. So stop buying tactics and start understanding and leveraging what makes tactics work, aka human behavior and psychology. Okay. Now let's move on to the last one. This is proof. Okay. These results did not just come from a new shiny object. They came from going with human psychology rather than against it. Now, we worked with this guy named Nima. He was doing about $1 million a month. He didn't change his offer, didn't change the team, didn't find a new marketing strategy. We just re-architected his entire client acquisition around how human psychology actually works how human behavior works, and he went from $1 million a month to $4 million a month in about 120 days. Julian didn't get more leads. He actually talked to fewer leads and essentially just rewrote his entire conversations, focused on the psychology behind why people make decisions. And he went from 297 to 338 cash collected in the next month on a third of the calls. He took 50 calls before, and then he went down to 13, and he made more money. Velko is another example of this. He didn't change his offer. He didn't spend more on ads. He just applied simple psychological leverage principles to the same activity he was already doing. And then he went from, I think his personal best before was about 400K in a month. He went to 450K the very next month, new personal best. Oscar did the same sort of thing. He had the same leads, same product, same team. He just started operating at that decision layer, like I explained, rather than the surface layer, more identity, more emotion, etc. And he had his best month ever at 178,000 cash collected. Now the pattern across all of these, none of them found a new shiny object. All of them stopped fighting against human psychology and started working with it. And their process for acquiring customers became significantly easier as a result. Because, as I always say, customer acquisition is not hard. Fighting against human psychology is hard. And most people just never learn the difference. And so this is why I do exactly what I do. I implement battle-tested psychological strategies into your client acquisition so that your business works with human psychology, not against it. We're not talking about new tactics. We're not talking about a new script. We're talking about the operating system that controls everything else about how humans think and act. So if that's interesting to you, you've got a business, you're doing consistent revenue, and you'd like some help with that, the link is in the description. Come learn more, and we'll chat soon.